Welcome to Artists Rising. This podcast is for artists to learn more about cultivating creativity and fostering mental and emotional health. Basically, the stuff we don't learn in art schools and conservatories. My name is Jenny Rebecca, and I am here to empower and equip you to go forward in pursuing your creative dreams with more confidence, resilience, and freedom to show up and do what we as artists do best. Be vulnerable day after day. Let's do this. Okay, welcome to Artists Rising. Today we are talking about a very exciting topic. However, I think probably most creatives will cringe just a little bit when they hear it. We are talking about discipline. I know, discipline. Yes, we're going to talk about it, but I'm going to tell you a story so it'll go down a little bit easier. I'm in my kitchen today here in Berlin, and I am balancing my microphone on a can of red beets, and I'm trying something new this time. I'm actually videotaping and filming for the first time at the same time as I record. So we're gonna give this a try and see how this works. Never done it before, but might be a new little way to get the podcast out if I can put it up on YouTube. And so we're doing that today, and today is a special day, February 3rd, but we're talking about yesterday, February 2nd, 2020, which commemorates a very special day for me personally. It is the year anniversary of my song diary project from this last year. And today I want to tell you the story about one of my favorite projects of all time, and it is called Jenny Rebecca's Song Diary. And this last year was actually the third time that I've done it. But I want to tell you the story about how it originally started. So I did the Song Diary 3 different years, and the first time I did it was in 2011 and 12. And I had moved to Berlin right before that, a couple years before that, during a time in my life when I was extremely depressed. We're going to just jump right into some depth in the story right here. For those of you who don't know, I was married before, and my first husband suffered from a pretty severe mental illness and ended up leaving me because he just couldn't be married anymore. That whole story and the pain of that and the topic of mental illness in general are all topics for podcast episodes on another day perhaps, but I want to tell you about what happened as a result of all that pain. So I had moved to Berlin. I was still in the throes of the backlash of that pain and really grieving a lot. And I honestly didn't know what to do with myself. I had studied opera in New York City, and that's where I met my first husband, and we got married before my last year of conservatory, and then eventually ended up moving away from New York because his illness was just too much, and it was so all-consuming, and it was also so expensive to stay in New York, and we weren't even pursuing art anymore, the reason that we had moved to New York in the first place. And so we ended up moving back to the Midwest where I was raised, back to Kansas City. And at that point, I basically had given up on my dreams of opera for a few years. But then after he left, I ended up moving to Berlin and started singing again. And things started opening up, and I got some really amazing jobs, some really amazing opportunities came my way. I got to sing some of my dream opera roles, Violetta and La Traviata, Madame Butterfly, Theodora from Handel's Theodora, and I even got to play an opera singer in a real movie called Ludwig der Zweite, or Ludwig II, and it was in movie theaters in Germany and Austria and Switzerland. You can actually still, you can look it up on YouTube and find it. The 2012 version of Ludwig II. Anyways, all of those things were really great and fun, but at the same time, I was still grieving so much and in so much pain. And the rejection I felt was so deep, and the perfectionism as well of being in the classical world at that time was also not helpful to me during this time. I was really burned out. And burned out really as a result of my thought life. And during the time my first husband was sick, I was constantly neglecting myself and taking care of him. And that's totally on me. That was my responsibility. I take full responsibility for not taking care of myself during those years. But sometimes, when you're put in situations or you find yourself in situations where it literally feels like you're in survival mode, you just react. And so I was then experiencing the consequences of reacting in a way that actually really didn't serve me, and not taking care of myself and not putting myself and my own needs first. Also, I was full of self-hatred and shame, and the fact that my marriage had ended, the shame and the rejection I felt for this, especially as a Christian, dealing with certain things that people in the church said to me during the time, the fact that I was actually really believing that I wasn't worth fighting for because my husband had chosen not to fight for me. I mean, we could have a therapist's heyday all day with things that were going on, but I only bring this up simply to try to demonstrate the state that I was in, and it was not pretty. And at some point during this time in 2011, I started writing songs. And I had written a few songs during that time, a couple in high school and college, and probably a total of about 15 in my life up to that point. But during this time, I had just started writing songs just to express how I was feeling. And literally, I think the first song that I wrote during that time, the title was called The Saddest Thing in the World. Anyways, I made little YouTube videos of myself singing it and shared it with my family and friends. And it felt so good just to express myself and then share it with other people. And I literally felt seen and heard and connected to my heart, and to others in a way that I hadn't in a really, really long time. So I kept doing it, and about 2 weeks later, I had written a new song every day and a new music video every day, and it was a really great distraction. And about that time, I was talking to my dad on the phone, and I was still really, really depressed, and he asked me something like, "So what are you looking forward to in the next few weeks?" I was just so sad, and I said, nothing. I just really couldn't think of anything. And then he said, "Well, have you been enjoying these songs that you've been writing?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I have." He said, "Okay, keep doing that." So I did. And I honestly don't know if it's just my slightly extreme, slightly obsessive personality, or maybe just the intense desire I had to heal and express all the things that I'd been suppressing inside of me, but I went to town. I wrote and wrote and wrote and sang and sang. And I wrote at least one new song every day, sometimes more than one, and made a new little music video to go with it. And sad songs, which were really the first thing, turned into silly songs and philosophical songs and Broadway sounding songs and jazzy songs and country and cheesy songs and avant-garde and crazy experimental things. I was just exploring and being spontaneous and honestly having the time of my life. I had never before experienced spontaneous creativity in that way, and it literally blew up my life in the best way. All of a sudden, I was connecting to this life force, and those of you who already create and love to create know what I'm talking about. It's magnetic, it's electrifying, it's completely, quite possibly one of the strongest forces in all the world. I really believe the creative force is God, coming in contact with God and the creator of the world. And when you are in the moment and going for it, there's nothing on earth like it. In that moment, you are love, you are peace, you are radiant, everything is possible. It's like flying, and it is wonderfully addictive. And so after 6 months of daily songwriting and music video making, I was having more fun than I had ever had in my life up to that point. And I thought, well, I might as well make this into a project. So I called it Jenny Rebecca's Song Diary, and I eventually decided to do it for at least a year and commit to at least a year of doing it and see what happened. And I had all my friends in Berlin be in my videos, and we made music videos singing on the street, in grocery stores, in restaurants and cafes, on bicycles, in the bathtub, on the beach, in boats. Honestly, you name it. And I had the time of my life. I remember someone early on in my process of the Song Diary telling me, you're never going to be able to write a new song every day. Why would you even attempt to that? That's crazy. And honestly, the beginning of the Song Diary didn't even feel like discipline to me. It felt like fun. And it felt like drinking water after I had been wandering around in the desert for a few long months. But I'm also the kind of person that when someone says something like that to me, I just kind of dig my heels in and I'm like, watch me. So I think the feeling of discipline and that the Song Diary actually required discipline didn't come until maybe around month 7. After I had really committed to doing the project for at least a year, because at that point I was like, was this the best idea? And then I started to really question for the first time, can I really do this? But the interesting thing about disciplining yourself to be creative is that it's not like being self-controlled in other areas. I mean, I do think, and studies have shown that the more you practice discipline in any area, the more you grow in your ability to be self-controlled and to practice self-restraint. And that's good news, because it's not like we're born with only a certain amount of self-control and self-discipline and then that's all we get. We can actually practice it and we can grow our ability. So that's wonderful news, right? But the thing I really found about disciplining myself in creativity is that it's not like a diet. I've done a lot of diets in my lifetime. Ask anyone who knows me. I've experimented with a plethora of diets and love learning things. So it was always also an attempt to learn more about nutrition and health, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, no diet that I have ever done is going to negate the fact that a cupcake still tastes amazing. And even though I can be self-controlled and do sugar detoxes and discipline myself to eat green things sometimes, not all the time, I'm sorry, but a cupcake is always going to taste amazing. It just is. And the difference between being disciplined in creative realms is that, yeah, sitting down to start always feels a little bit like the dieting feeling. Not always, but it totally can. Resistance is real. And a shout out to Stephen Pressfield. Resistance is real. He wrote the book about it. But every time I create, the difference is I get a cupcake. Every time. Even if what I create is awful, if I can carve out even 5 minutes of time to give myself the opportunity to be in that place of non-judgmental creative flow, I'm telling you, cupcakes galore and chocolate and jelly bellies and champagne, whatever is your jam, you're gonna get a hit, and it's amazing. So what I actually came to realize is that the more I wrote songs, the easier it became. And not only did it become easier, the more I actually craved doing it. And not to say that there wasn't resistance that came from time to time, but I started to realize that once I was able to move past the resistance, I would be rewarded 100 times over. And also, just to remind you, this was in the early days of blissful ignorance for me as well. When I had been in the opera world up until that time, I mean, I knew so much about the technical things of the classical world, about classical singing, but and eventually I realized, okay, I need to shift gears and pursue a different career. But I didn't know much about songwriting at the time. I was just having fun and experimenting and really able to experience spontaneous creativity just for the pleasure of it, and not with the judgment that comes with technical excellence sometimes. So my first song diary experience was just what I like to call my own school of creativity. So that first song diary I ended up doing for over a year. I wrote over 400 songs, each with a music video. And also those videos, I uploaded them to YouTube. They're all on private now, but they are still on YouTube. And I'm getting ready to launch a Patreon account, and anyone who decides to become a patron of mine on Patreon may just get private access to my personal hit song, Clap Your Hands for Kale. It's like a real life Jessica Day experience. Anyways, at that point, about a year after the song diary, I started a band in Berlin called Rove, and that's another story. But eventually I ended up moving to California, where I was studying more about healing, prayer, studying healing, getting more healing myself, receiving therapy, and also ended up getting more training to help others in the creative process. And not in the creative process. I mean, I also was at the same time doing that, but I was getting also equipped to help others in the healing process. And I was teaching at Simpson University at the time, and also the ministry school that was there, and teaching a lot of singer-songwriters about the creative process. So during that time, which was 2015, I decided to do the song diary again with my students to show my students that they could do it too. So my whole class and I did a songwriting challenge together, which was really fun. And I did the song diary again. And that time I really noticed, because I had been out of it for a while, wow, it's not always as easy as you think to just sit down and write every day. But mostly the reason for that was because I had not been doing that for so long, and it took me a little while to get back into it and just move past my own judgment and expectations that I had for myself. But from that song diary came most of the songs to my first album that I finally released in 2017. And then we went on tour for that album, which brought me to a place creatively where I felt stuck again after that. And that was then the beginning of 2018. And that I could do a whole another podcast episode about that, which I think I definitely will at some point, because I think that's also an important topic for artists. When we finish a big milestone or achieve a big dream and goal, sometimes it's kind of like, what do I do next? And how do I keep dreaming and grow new dreams and all of that? But again, that's for another day. But yeah, I think as an artist as well, you realize there are seasons for things, and seasons when you focus on different aspects of your art or your creative process. And after the recording process and the touring and performing process, I had some hard questions that I needed to ask myself, because I found myself faced with a lot of disappointments, expectations that I had had for myself that didn't quite get met like I thought they would through the tour and through the whole album release process. And even though there had been so many amazing things, and it was really the first one I'd ever done and had organized it all myself, etc., I had to basically come back to my why. Why am I doing this? What is it that I really love about singing and writing songs? And all that starts with the creative process itself. So, my husband and I ended up moving back to Berlin. Oh yeah, I got remarried during that time. Side note, I was in California for 6 years and met the love of my life. And he also happens to be a musician and composer, and coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, he just happened to love Berlin and wanted to learn German from before we even met. And so we ended up moving back to Berlin, Germany. And a few months after kind of settling back here, I knew what I had to do. It was time to get back to business and get back to just being in the arena, like that Theodore Roosevelt quote that Brene Brown talks about all the time, like getting dirty and going after it again, going after my first love again. And it's really so interesting to me how parallel relationships and life and persevering and going after your dreams are to discipline. But anyways, so a year ago yesterday, I started my third rendition or third time of Jenny Rebecca's Song Diary, and wrote a new original song every day along with a little music video for a year. And the music video part I actually didn't do for the entire year. The writing part, yes, but the music video part, I ended up stopping the music videos about 9 months in, because the editing of the music videos just was taking so much time. And I wanted to also really focus on releasing some new singles and producing them in a more professional way. So that's what I did. And I ended up also putting all the mini videos from the start, they're still all on Instagram. And I also really started to experiment with recording and how do I record myself. And so that was a big part of the last Song Diary, and a new part, which was really exciting and a steep learning curve, but it was also a really great step for me in the process. And the other thing that was special and different about the third year of the Song Diary was having more insight about emotional health and emotional intelligence, learning from my own counselor, Laura Duncan, from amazing people like Brene Brown and her work in vulnerability, and how also creativity plays a huge part in wholehearted living, and just being conscious about embracing imperfection was a really big theme for me this year. In the discipline of that, and also in the making it public, because my audience has grown significantly on social media since the first two Song Diaries. The first Song Diary, I didn't have an audience. My mom watched every single one, and I, had a few friends who were watching, and over the year it kind of grew into a really nice community who also supported me in a Kickstarter. But compared to my audience now, it felt a lot more scary all of a sudden to put new music out every day, and a lot more emotions came up about, how do I create and put things out there every day and be open about my process when I know it's not my best work and people might not understand my project. And is that really a good idea? And that's probably another podcast episode because that's a whole another longer topic. But like I said, about 9 months into it, I sort of shifted gears from the making of the videos and started recording the singles that actually have just been released in January this year, 2020. If you haven't had a chance to hear those, you can check them out on Spotify or Apple Music under my artist name, Jenny Rebecca. But to sum it all up, this is what I have learned about discipline from my song diaries. I learned that being disciplined in creativity brings more than just being disciplined in other areas. For example, if you're going to be disciplined in going to the gym, you're going to grow in strength and power and ultimately more freedom, which is also interesting because a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of students of mine, for example, think that being disciplined takes away your freedom, but actually the opposite is true. And this is a really great thing. I think this is true for almost anything that we can be disciplined in. If you discipline yourself to become a great singer or instrumentalist and practice every day, you're going to grow in your freedom to express all the things you want to express because you're going to have more strength, flexibility, and control, more mastery, actually. So this definitely happened for me through the song diaries. I became a lot more free because of the technical ability that I grew, but there was so much more. It literally became my spiritual practice, and having the discipline to write songs and sing every day brought healing literally every single time. And that's something that we can't say about a lot of other things. I don't know how many other things in the world you can be disciplined about that you can say will bring healing to yourself every day. Creating the opportunity for yourself to actually express your emotions. This is also an act of accepting your emotions. And this is a kind of freedom that is truly healing in the best sense. I was able to constantly discover new things about myself, what is existing inside of me, what is possible. I was on a constant adventure of uncovering beautiful surprises. Also committing to show up for myself and for my art every day is a marvelous act of self-care and self-love. And even in the times when I was trying to get my song of the day done right before midnight, every time I was rewarded and surprised by joy. Cupcakes. I'm telling you, cupcakes every time. And not only did I grow in my freedom and ability, but also so much in confidence and in my identity. I realized over time, whoa, I just wrote 50 songs, 100, 200, 400. After 3 song diaries, I have now written over 1,000 songs. That kind of commitment will change you. I know several students have shared with me that it feels so scary at first to step out and say, I'm a songwriter, or I'm a poet, or I'm a painter, I'm an actor, I'm a comedian, whatever it is that you do. The biggest battle is in your mind. So discipline is like sowing seeds every day into your identity, into your dreams. But I tell you what, after writing as many songs as I have, regardless of how good they are, I have shown up to the page day after day, journal after journal, morning and night, and I have practiced keeping the promise I made to myself. And that feels so good. I just want to tell you, you are worth keeping promises for. And you are worth fighting for. And It feels so great to look back over my life in the last few years now and know I learned to throw a stake in the ground for what I love, for something that brings me life and joy and healing, and ultimately, I hope, many other people life and joy and healing. But I made a commitment to myself, to God, that I am walking out step by step, day by day, and that's a big thing. That's a big deal. Malcolm Gladwell talks about putting in 10,000 hours before you can really say you're an expert. And I don't know exactly where I am in that lineup of hours, but for sure I can attest to the fact that showing up and doing the work gives you authority. And I do feel like I've gone through the fire and I've lived to tell about it. So I hope that my story is inspiring to you. I think a lot of times when we avoid taking action in the direction of our creative dreams, the burden becomes more and more unbearable. That burden is the burden of your own greatness. That is the burden that you feel of your own fabulous potential. But I promise, disciplining yourself to take a step, to make action day after day, even if it's just teeny tiny actions, is going to make that burden lighter. And you're literally going to be sowing a seed and casting a vote on the side of, yes, I am a writer. Yes, I am a designer. Yes, I am an actress. Yes, I am an artist. So I believe in you. I know you can do it. And to give you just a little nudge of help, I have created a little questionnaire, a little creative discipline prompt, so to speak, to get you started. So if you head over to jennyrebecca.com/discipline prompt, you'll be able to download that for free. And hopefully that will help you get started in taking action, even if it's really small steps in the direction of your dreams. Also, I just want to let you know that if there are any people out there who would be interested in seeing the rest of the songs that I wrote this last year for my song diary that I didn't release yet, or if you're interested in any of the songs from the archives of the past song diaries, this Friday I'm going to be launching my Patreon account, and so you can search eventually Patreon, Jenny Rebecca Ronning, Artists Rising, and it should come up. And so if you want to see Clap Your Hands for Kale or any other little treasures, I am starting a secret song society where I will be creating and releasing new home demos as well as demos from the past for patrons every month. And so if you're interested, it would be a great way to support me either as a musician or the podcast and Artists Rising. So stay tuned for that. There are going to be a lot of exciting things coming to life on that Patreon account. And also this Friday, my newest music video for my single Home is premiering on YouTube at 3 o'clock Eastern time. So New York time, 3 p.m. this Friday. That's 9 p.m. here in Berlin, 12 o'clock noon in California. So get ready. There's this new feature on YouTube where you can actually watch all together the premiere at the same time, which is super fun. The new single is produced by Nick Crofts, and the video was made by Julia Klotz. And you can actually even go now to the YouTube premiere and even leave a comment and say like, hey, getting ready, getting excited to see it, something like that if you want to. And you can also sort of, we can do like a live chat as it's premiering, which would be really fun. So if you feel like joining, would love for you to join. And I think that's it for today. Go check out that discipline prompt and get that free download. And also there's 30 days of free, 30 days of encouragement for free, a download also on my website, jennyrebecca.com. So if you're interested in that, head to the Artists Rising portion of my website and have an amazing rest of your day. Hey, Artists Rising Co. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, write a review, share it with a friend, tag us on your social media at Artists Rising Co. And if you would like a free download of 30 days worth of encouragement for creatives, head to my website at jennyrebecca.com/Artists Rising. And it is just waiting for you there, waiting to breathe some new life into your everyday creative process. Again, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. When you hear me coming, you're gonna